In the summer of 2005, I met a girl. Emma was my first serious girlfriend, and I found myself caring for her a rather great deal quickly. She had a personality unlike any other girl I met, and it intrigued me. She was smart, pretty, and kind of odd in some ways, but I liked it. You could say it was her most endearing factor. The first 3 months went along without a hitch. We spent a lot of time together. We laughed, we talked, we shared dreams and fears. I told her my fear of the dark and my overactive imagination. She told me her fear of dead people. I kinda laughed when she first told me. It was kinda lame, I thought at the time. Just dead people? Certainly just dead people aren't so scary by themselves. We kinda had a laugh about it and continued hanging out with each other and genuinely loving each and every single minute we had together. Things went on like this for 3 months, and I honestly couldn't ask for anything more perfect. She was a girl I didn't even know I was waiting for, and I was the guy she always wanted. About a month later, she called me on the phone, which was nothing new. We spent a lot of time on the phone. It was our favorite thing to do other than physically be near each other. She was telling me about her day at school, at her high school. She didn't really have a lot of friends, which I found hard to believe. She was having a bad day, and she was just glad to be on the phone with me. I was glad to be on the phone with her too. I wasn't having the greatest day myself. Around 6 p.m. we were watching the same show on TV while talking on the phone. Something we did whenever I wasn't allowed to come over, since she lived with her mother and her mother worked nights. I would come over whenever she left to work so we can actually spend some time together. Her mother just left and Emma was talking to me about what just happened on the TV. Then the commercial stopped and the program resumed. After another 2 commercial breaks, I noticed neither of us said anything for a while. So I made some stupid remark about the ridiculous commercial that was on at the moment. She didn't say anything. I called her name. She didn't answer. I called her name like 6 times before she actually acknowledged me. She kinda just grunted. I asked if she was alright, and she said something. It was a sentence alright, but it seemed gibberish. At first I thought she was just trying to freak me out, or was playing some kind of elaborate joke. She was breathing heavily and erotically, and her words seemed difficult for her to form. She seemed very distant and not at all like herself. I can't remember exactly what she said at first. It was muffled and distorted, and there was this noise, a banging noise, that the longer I listened to, the louder it got. I eventually asked Emma what the noise was. She got silent for a second before responding.
You can hear that?
Of course I can hear it. It's loud as hell. What is it? She paused for a long moment. It seemed to drag on and on.
It's them.
I was genuinely quite freaked out, but somewhere in my mind I still thought she was messing with me. As a joke. You're joking, right? This is some kind of game and we're gonna have a laugh about this later?
Don't mock them!
She sounded worried, almost panicked.
They don't like it.
I thought this was funny. She was really going through a lot of trouble just to play a joke on me. I laughed audibly.
They'll find you.
Her voice sounded almost unnatural, as if it was someone else talking. She hung up the phone right after that. I called her back a few times, but no one answered. Now worried out of my mind, I put on my jacket and left my house. I hoped that she was okay, and I rushed to her apartment. When I was half a mile from her house, my car battery died. I was too worried about Emma to let that stall me. I had to know that she was okay, and I had to worry about my car afterwards. I locked up my car and began running the rest of the way to her apartment. The sun was almost set after a short bit of running, and my lungs were starting to burn from the crisp, cold air I was forced to inhale. I still don't know, to this day, if what happened next was some kind of trick on my eyes due to the low amount of light, or if I was just worrying so much I hallucinated. I'm actually not sure what I saw even happened. Maybe I just imagined it. These things with long, gangly limbs that bent backwards, crossing the street as if leaving her house. I jumped. My heart was racing. Now I thought that she was seriously in danger and mustered up all the courage I had to run to her front door. It was left ajar. I went in, calling her name. My heart now felt like it was going to burst through my chest. Surely, I was hallucinating. Lack of oxygen, that's all. I was breathing heavily as I searched through the house. I found her in the living room, curled up in a ball. Her skin was paper white and her pupils were enormous. She was shaking and seemed to be in a sort of comatose-like state. I called her name, but she didn't respond. She wouldn't respond to anything. Not when I touched her, shook her, nothing. I picked her up and took her to her room. As I laid her down onto her bed, I noticed her eyes were darting across the wall behind me. Not in a random kind of way, but as if following something. Her eyes reached to the space in the wall directly behind me. And they stopped. Her eyes widened, and she began shaking. Her mouth was left open, as if screaming, but no actual sound escaped. Leaning over her, frozen, in pure, unadulterated fear, I tried to make myself turn around. Part of me didn't want to meet whatever she saw, but the other part of me, the survivalist in me, forced me to turn around. And as I did, I saw another thing. This thing was gray, its limbs bent backwards. It hung from the place where the ceiling and the wall met, clutching in all four claws. It hung there and stared at me with its sunken eyes. I couldn't make out if they were holes or the blackest eyes imaginable, because all there was blackness. A loud sound I heard over the phone was back. The wooden blinds that hung from the window were banging themselves on the windowsill, as if someone was lifting it and throwing them against it again and again and again. The sound was very fast and very loud. My ears were starting to ring as the thing slowly inched its way up the wall and across the ceiling towards us. Every second the ringing got louder. Soon, the thing was directly above us. And as it clutched the ceiling, its face zoomed in at us, its neck stretching. I saw the black eyes, and its stitched mouth coming closer. My chest was hurting now, most likely from how my heart was beating. I started to black out. I don't remember what happened next. The only thing I seem to remember was waking up next to Emma and seeing her there, still curled up, eyes still darting across the room. I looked around but saw nothing. I called her name and, of course, she didn't respond. It took me about 10 minutes of sitting there, holding her, calling her name, talking to her, singing to her, before she actually responded to me. Thankfully so. I was worried to take her to the hospital with the story I had. I called her name. She blinked suddenly, and she looked at me. I decided to ask her, "Emma, what the hell is going on?" She looked at me with a genuine surprise.
What are you talking about? When did you get here?
She didn't remember a thing. She couldn't even explain where she got the marks on her arm. A week after that, I was at her house, and I decided to ask her about what happened that night. I wanted some answers. She still didn't remember what happened, but she did have something to say about it. She told me that her fear of dead people stemmed from the fact that she used to see what she thought were dead people. Sometimes she did still see things, but she learned over the years that they weren't dead people. She couldn't say what they were, but she explained how some would talk to her, and others wouldn't. Some would stare at her, and others would avoid her. Ultimately, some were nice, and others were malevolent. She said that the face on her ceiling told her most of what she knows about them. He explained that not all of them were good. He had also warned her of the tall, dark man who wanted her all to himself. He explained that the freaky limbs things were the tall man's, and they were there to protect her from anyone else, but to also keep her in check. She told me about how they would hurt her sometimes, and that her bed was the only safe place for most of the time. Whenever she had her episodes, Her bed was surrounded by water, and the things couldn't get to her. She told me that they made her cut herself whenever she'd been bad. I love this girl. Despite all the crazy stuff she told me, I wanted to be there for her. I wanted to help her. It didn't take me very long to figure out that being with her was also harmful to her. After 3 years, I had witnessed episode after episode. I learned how to calm her down within a few minutes. I even got her to stop cutting herself. The last few months of our relationship, she didn't see anything at all. No cutting, no episodes. I honestly felt ashamed I didn't get her professional help, but I admit I felt happy and a little proud that she seemed to be getting much better. All this changed when I proposed to her. Of course she said yes. It was the happiest day of our lives. That night we went to a concert to celebrate. I took her to see her favorite band, which was secretly also my favorite band. The band came on last and I stood there, holding her. And as we both sang the song off the top of our lungs, she turned around during one of the slower songs and put her arms around me. I did the same. I looked at her, only to see her eyes looking in the distance behind me, towards the back of the venue. I looked back, but saw nothing. No, not now. God damn it, this was the perfect day, the perfect night. I grabbed her chin and pulled her facing towards me. Just look in my eyes. Nowhere else, I told her. She struggled, but she did just that. I stood there holding her. As we looked at each other, I kept telling her it's not real. Remember that. She would just nod her head, tears in her eyes. The song ended, and so did the episode. I dropped her off at her house, and after the world's longest kiss, I got in my car and headed home. Once home, I took a quick shower and readied for bed. I was completely exhausted after drying off. I lay down in my bed and went to sleep. At least, I started to. I was jolted awake by the sound of my blinds banging. My heart stopped as I saw one of the things right above my bed. The last thing I saw was its face coming towards me. I woke up from the blackness the next morning with a cut on my arm. My mind instantly jumped to Emma and I raced to my phone to call her. I never got a response. When I stopped by her house, her mother answered the door and told me she didn't want to see me. I didn't know what the fuck is going on. After a week, I was in severe depression. I didn't hear a damn thing from her. No replies from her MySpace or Facebook. No entries on her Zanga or LiveJournal. Sadly, I didn't hear a thing for 2 years. I saw on her Facebook that she was in a relationship. My heart sank. No. It felt more than sank. It felt like it withered and died right then and there. I messaged her, very formally, asking how she was. I also asked what happened between us. She didn't respond for 3 days. When she did, she told me that she was heartbroken for a whole month when I broke up with her. She said that she cried in her mother's arms for weeks and weeks, and thought that she would never stop. She told me she made me a card and a painting, both of which she had been working on for months without me knowing, and sent me the week I broke up with her to try to get me back. I told her I never received anything. I was about to argue that I never broke up with her. It was a ridiculous idea because I was in love with this girl. I still was. I still am. I would never end what we had. But something stopped me. I got the thought perhaps she was happy now. I asked her about the guy she was with now. She replied he had proposed to her. She said yes. She was truly happy. Then I asked her about the things that she saw. She remembered nothing. Nothing at all. Her episodes were gone. I felt completely lost. Destroyed from the inside out. We spent the next month talking about the past. She didn't recall most of our relationship. I would ask her about some of my favorite memories with her, and she wouldn't remember a thing. She didn't remember that she used to be a cutter. She didn't remember anything that she used to see, good or bad. And she didn't even remember that she was once engaged to me, nor that she remembered that amazing night we had at the concert. All she remembered was we were together once, and then I broke up with her, which broke her heart for months. I still love Emma with every fiber of my being, and I want to figure out what happened. What went wrong? I think I deserve that much. An explanation. I honestly thought for a while everything that happened, that perhaps she had some type of mental illness. I mean, everything she experienced was practically textbook paranoid schizophrenia. It would be easy to chalk it up like that, even after explaining these symptoms to my professor of psychology class. Or after the 5 years of research that I poured into trying to figure out ways to explain these events. Almost everything added up to schizophrenia. Everything but one thing. I still can't figure out why. I still see that figure on top of my ceiling some nights.